So, thank you for having me on. I haven't done any public speaking for like, I don't know, 7 or 10 years already, so I'm quite having a panic attack right now, but that's okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to thank you for your help too. Thank you. I just wanted to give a present. I just wanted to give a presentation today on uh, an easy etiology tree for people to follow that are interested in going on an honest journey of health and wellness. And I usually give this presentation honestly to like real hardcore corporate crowds. And I can see you guys are already in the mindset of going on an honest journey of health and wellness. So you guys are already like far and ahead of the general population. But it's also important to remember that probably 98% of Americans are still in the very symptom management loop of treating their symptoms, usually with like medical drugs and probably not much else. So like 10 years goes by, 15 years goes by, they're on more drugs than ever, looking and feeling worse than ever, but they still continue down that path because really they just don't know any other way, and that symptom management healthcare is all they're really exposed to. So I created a very simple etiology tree. It's not for everyone, and the message doesn't work for everyone either, and there are no absolutes, okay? But for people that are interested in going on an honest health and wellness journey, which isn't easy to do at all, it is like just a very easy flow of something people can follow so they know which variables to attend to during their journey to not get stuck in endless loops of managing one symptom, and then you might get rid of it and then another symptom pops up 3 years later and you got to attend to that for a few years, and it's like your whole entire life you're not feeling quite healthy or mentally or physically well in one way or another. So I created this chart here. At the top you can see it's fat gain, but really honestly you can put the bulk majority of mental or physical health issues at the very top, and the chart flows the same. It's just fat gain is very easy to explain and straightforward to explain. So I'll present it here as best as I can. Once again, I haven't done public speaking in forever, so a little bit rusty here. But let's start at the top. So we're starting at the top of the chart here, and let's say a person has excess body fat, okay? So it's important to always see like excess body fat, for example, as a symptom. And a lot of people would go like, okay, so what is it a symptom of? It's a symptom of poor lifestyle and nutritional choices. And I know I have a timeline here, so I'm gonna basically summarize a lot of these points, but if you guys want a lot more detail, I could easily send you a tremendous amount of just free content and information on each subject matter. So I find from like a healthcare perspective, it's important to, when a person is ready to go on an honest health and wellness journey, it's important to educate them on a lot of variables that seem obvious and very easy to understand. And oftentimes intellectually they are very easy to understand, but then applying these things in a world that doesn't facilitate health conscious choices or mental and physical health is like another story. And the application of this information is obviously where the benefits come from. So once again, it's important to see fat gain as a symptom of poor lifestyle and nutritional choices. And these choices basically divide into, like obviously food choices. And once again, a lot of you guys are aware of this, but it's important to educate the client on what real food even is these days, because a lot of the population is so far detached from farming and food production that they really can't even tell, and simply because there's no education in nutrition anyways, they really can't even tell like what's real food versus fake food, for example. And it's important obviously to go over a lot of various labeling claims with them. So it can be very deceptive these days with a lot of greenwashing in the food industry. So like a popular one would be like a grass-fed, grass-finished claim, which you hear often. But because none of the grass-fed labeling claims are regulated at all, as a cattle rancher, you could easily, raise your cattle on grass for 8 months, put them on grain for 4 or 5 months, and then finish them on grass for about a week, and then label it grass-fed and grass-finished, or labels such as "Made in America." Legally, you could import cattle from Mexico to California, process the cattle there, and still say it's made in America, as well as a lot of vegetables. They're grown hydroponically these days, as well as USDA organic vegetables as well. It's not even grown in the soil. And just things of this sort. Now, I'm kind of mentioning those as things to look out for your crowd, because I can tell you guys are already a lot more consciously aware of your food choices, but even a lot of that stuff goes under the radar. of people making good food choices. And then obviously the general average American, you'd have to educate them on, it's probably not a good idea to eat Pop-Tarts or cereal as 90% of your total calories for the day, and educate them on single ingredient food and what real food is, et cetera, et cetera. Also, even things kind of like the vegetarian label claim, you see that in a lot of poultry or egg products, for example, but a lot of people forget that, hens, whether they're grown as broiler chickens for meat or eggs, they're not vegetarians. They're omnivores. They like beating bugs and insects. And a lot of times when you see that vegetarian fed claim on the label, it really just means grain fed. And that's not their natural diet. And obviously there's a lot that we can talk about and cover there on why the nutritional profile won't be optimized if they're not fed a species specific diet. And then obviously if the nutritional profile isn't optimized in the egg or the meat of the animal, then you're also not going to be able to optimize your health because you just can't come up with nutrients from nowhere. So another important variable to educate the person on is obviously drinking like filtered water or not drinking water out of plastic every single day and stuff of this sort. And once again, I know a lot of these things are probably obvious to you, but trust me, for like 98% of Americans out there, it's totally new information, which is another sign that how far detached American culture has gone from living a health-conscious lifestyle and how much pathology has been normalized in American culture. Another thing is educating them on the importance of sleep, and the importance of sleeping between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. because your body typically repairs itself from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. physically, and it repairs itself from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. mentally. And a lot of people are like, well, yeah, I totally understand that and totally understand the benefits. But once again, it's not about understanding these things intellectually, it's about actually applying them. And very few people actually even have a regimented sleep schedule. The average American sleeps around, 5 hours a day or so. And even a lot of times when people say like, oh yeah, I am sleeping very well and this and that, and you look at their logs and they're like, they say they go to sleep at 10, but really they're in bed by 10 or going to sleep by 11 p.m. They're actually sleeping, but then when you average out the hours throughout the week, they're losing like 7 hours of physical repair time every single week. And then they're wondering why they're always so tired. They can't recover from workouts. They can't recover from nagging injuries, et cetera, and stuff of that sort. So just some examples. And then obviously, especially in Western culture, I feel it's important to educate people on proper central nervous system management. It's kind of like a very work culture and just working crazy hours, like 10 hours behind a computer, 6 or 7 days a week. It's common and it's been normalized, but it's not normal. And a lot of people perceive that as like just something I have to do and stuff of that sort. But if you kind of look at how the central nervous system has evolved, it hasn't evolved to deal very well with micro stresses, which a lot of people underplay. Micro stresses being stuck in traffic, even drinking too much coffee, working with toxic coworkers, working with a boss you don't agree with, maybe doing work you don't like, not being true to yourself, having problems at home as well, financial problems. All of these things are like micro stresses, and they're all typically underplayed because once again, they're very normalized in Western culture as well. But the central nervous system, if you look at how basically the Homo sapien has lived throughout their entire existence, and there are 28 plus human species that have come and gone, and basically outside of the last few thousand years, 10,000 years to be roughly exact, everyone was a hunter-gatherer. Basically, they lived how you would roughly live on your vacation, So you would get up, let's say as an example, you'd go hunting with your tribesmen or women, whatever the pronouns are these days, I don't even know. But of course it would be stressful and there would be a macro stress, You might lose a person in your tribe, which is very stressful as well, or someone might get injured. But then after you have that successful hunt, what happens for a few weeks? You're hanging out in the forest, you're drinking just natural water, you're eating, wild crops, wild game, A+ food groups. You have your small community, your tribe, you're outside, you're getting sun exposure, et cetera, et cetera. And then you got to go for another hunt, and it might be kind of a little bit stressful or something of that sort. But you can see there is a stressful period followed by valleys of kind of nothing going on, and then another stressful period. And that's actually how the central nervous system has evolved to optimally function. But unfortunately, these days, you have macro stresses followed by an abundance of endless list of micro stresses. The average American is getting up tired. They have a bunch of coffee in the morning. They get on the freeway and get in traffic, and it's actually very stressful in the central nervous system to even drive a car because it has to be very amped up so you can stay in the lanes. You have this car coming over here, this car coming over here. Everyone's in a rush in the morning too. That spikes your cortisol quite a bit. You get to work, there are deadlines there. There's always a coworker or two you don't see eye to eye on because you're around them 8 hours a day. That causes a lot of micro stress. For lunch, you go out, fast food. There are a lot of, obviously it's not going to be organic, it's going to be grown in a lot of industrial seed oils. You're getting a lot of exposure to synthetic biocides, et cetera, et cetera. You get back to work, once again, 4 hours of that. You get home, get stuck in traffic, possibly get home to not so loving of a family, which a lot of people have in their life, which causes a lot of stress as well. And you can just see a whole person's life is consumed with just an endless amount of micro stresses and macro stresses as well, which is the worst case scenario for like a central nervous system. And a person breaks down and has to create maladaptive behavior at that point, if that's not dealt with or managed with. So it doesn't matter, what kind of nutrition program at that point they're on, or what kind of workout program or medical drugs they're on. They're really just going to be on a damage control strategy their entire life for the most part. So once again, each one of these topics, it could be like a multiple hour conversation. Kind of summarizing them as best as I can here. Also teaching people, using movement as medicine. Telling people, maybe sitting 8 hours a day behind a computer, 10 hours a day behind a computer, isn't how your body has evolved to function. It's evolved to have dynamic, low intensity movement all day, constantly moving around. So educating them on how to optimize their workplace, or possibly just find a workplace, in my opinion, that just matches human biology and evolution a lot better. Because a lot of times with a lot of occupations, it's just a trade-off in the sense that the person just has to determine if the paycheck is worth the price of that paycheck, which could oftentimes be a lot more than the paycheck itself. They just don't realize that in the immediate moment, because just a lot of jobs are just not conducive to human health, for example. So, and then also educating people on reducing their toxic load and chemical exposure these days is important as well. Little things like just stop drinking and heating up your food in plastic. At least there's a lot of gaps in this certification, but at least buy USDA organic certified food, which is basically, if it's at the grocery store, it's for the most part like industrial organic food, but the label still does a really good job at decreasing the customer's exposure to various synthetic biocides, antibiotics, beta agonists, various steroids, and other chemicals used in food production as well. And then obviously as they become more open-minded, get them to purchase for more like companies like AmericanGrassFed.org, which has a on-site certification process for grass-fed products, or Force of Nature meats are great as well. EatWild.com is a great resource also, and stuff of that sort. But that transition will be too tough for the average American to go from eating the standard American diet of Pop-Tarts to ordering from American Grass-Fed or finding a local farmer that actually knows how to farm properly too, which is another obstacle as well. So, and then some other tools, educating them on the importance of maybe having a GI MAP test done to track their digestive health yearly. And a full hormonal panel as well might be an important thing as well. Easy to do, especially the full hormonal panel could be covered by insurance as well, most insurances. So that right there is already a huge upgrade from today's symptom management model, especially the medical model of healthcare. Now, nothing against the medical community as a whole. I think emergency medicine is great, and they're true angels in the sky. But generally speaking, and there are no absolutes, of course, the model that a lot of health fields are practicing under today is, for example, like as my friend Jator Pierre would say, if you have a rock stuck inside your shoe, instead of taking the rock out and walking pain-free and maybe getting better shoes or something of that sort, they just tell you to keep the rock there and take painkillers instead. Which sounds super stupid, but if you really think about it, that's for the most part how healthcare works these days. You have anxiety, don't worry about maybe learning social skills, maybe dying down your work schedule, maybe not drinking so many stimulants, maybe learning how to be true to yourself a little bit. Well, don't worry about that. Here, just take these anti-anxiety pills. You have back pain. Don't worry about how to identify the pain triggers of those of that back pain, or maybe study Stuart McGill's work, which is a leading a spine pathology researcher. Here, just take these painkillers or have this surgery, but never correct what actually led to that problem. And the biggest issue these days is no one hears your story in healthcare. The average you're going to get at your medical office is a 3-minute assessment and a quick diagnosis and get some pills and then you're out. But the problem with that is if you don't change the person that's causing the problem tends to always come back, which is great for making money, because you have an endless list of customers and they're going to stay healthy enough to keep coming back for more drugs and treatments, but never actually come to a complete resolution of their symptoms. If there is some kind of miraculous reason of why they came to a complete resolution, there's just another symptom is going to come up. Because, for example, like high blood pressure, okay, you have high blood pressure, you're taking blood pressure medication, but what's missed is the belief system that led to the high blood pressure over a long enough time period is going to lead to a myriad of other health issues, mental and physical as well. So what's your strategy then? Just get more drugs there, and then there are going to be side effects from those drugs, and then get more drugs to counter the side effects there. And then by the time you're 50 or 60, you're like 60, 70 pounds overweight, you're on 15 medical drugs and feeling the worst you've ever felt, So, and what I'm covering here is we covered fat gain as a symptom, and we covered too, it's a symptom of poor lifestyle and nutritional choices. And that's already huge, covering that with people. Just covering the education there, but it's not enough. I would say the changes of lasting change, and when I speak lasting change in terms of fat gain, the only fat loss program that ever works is one you don't have to be on ever again. So if you find that you're losing weight, you're gaining weight again, losing weight, gaining weight again, usually I have to go a little bit deeper into the tree and figure out what's going on. So right here we covered fat gain is a symptom of poor lifestyle and nutritional choices. But what you would ask, why would people, do acts that are self-harming? So sometimes they just don't have the education of what real food is and stuff of that sort. But I find that's maybe 1 out of 30 or 40 cases, doing this for 17 years already. So you got to dive deeper. Like, why do people make poor lifestyle and nutritional choices? Because obviously they don't have a belief system that facilitates health-conscious choices. But the next question is why would people develop this belief system? And this goes into, I got this part right here from Paul Chek. So he's a great mentor of mine, and I got this from his 1, 2, 3, 4 Overcoming Obesity, Addiction, and Disease book. And a belief system that doesn't facilitate health-conscious choices can generally, the themes, once again, no absolutes, can generally be broken down into these categories. So usually, the person most always has some kind of love-hate relationship in their life, persistent. This could be at work, this could be at home. Most oftentimes, it's in both, in the workplace and at home. So there could be a couple of different themes here. A common one is, let's say you've been married for 10 years, and you genuinely actually love this person in the beginning, but you changed over time, and all of a sudden, your guys' core values don't align, But for one reason or another, the relationship doesn't end. It could be because of financial reasons, because of kids, because of social pressure as well, et cetera, et cetera. And what happens is the person in that relationship feels like they just don't have the power to be their true self, They kind of feel and perceive that. So in this situation, when those are persistent and you can't be your genuine self, kind of being fake to yourself basically, you have to over time form maladaptive behavior. And in this case, in this conversation, the person reaches for food. And why is that, you would have to ask? Well, it's simple. Food, it loves you and accepts you for who you are. It doesn't judge you. It gives you love. It gives you pleasure. Another thing is, the person has power over this food. They can pick up the food, they can eat it, it gives them pleasure, and they can put it away. Another variable they feel they don't have in their real life. So they feel like they don't have the power to leave their relationship. Or in the workplace, they feel they don't have the power to leave a job they don't like because they need a paycheck. And although they don't like their coworkers or the work or their boss, how they treat them, they just don't feel they don't have the self-esteem to leave, and stuff of that sort. Another very common theme is what's referred to as a story gap. And a story gap is basically, let's say a person genuinely, honestly just wants to be an artist, but they don't feel safe in the world being an artist. And what I mean safe is they don't feel like they're going to be appreciated for their work for one reason or another, and thus not going to be able to make a living. And then they might end up, on the street, and that's obviously going to be dangerous, et cetera, et cetera. And the myriad of inferences they can build upon that. So they become a lawyer. And obviously, in the beginning, it might be okay. The prestigious title and the salary might be great. But eventually, 2 years, 3 years goes by, and they know at the back of their head they genuinely just want to be an artist. This is just one example. This can take a myriad of different forms. And over time, that nagging voice will cause a tremendous amount of micro stresses in the central nervous system, because at the end of the day, you're being fake to yourself. And if you nest in that, you have to form maladaptive behavior to deal with that. In this case, once again, what is that? They reach for food. It accepts them for who they are, doesn't ask any questions. The power is there as well. This person didn't think they had the power to be an artist. They submitted to something more traditional and predictable financially. Another situation is a sense of emptiness. So sometimes you do get a person that's very successful in the external world, but they get to their 40s or 50s and find out that the ladder was leaned against the wrong building. And once again, same exact spiral. There's a story gap. It causes stress on the central nervous system. If the person is nesting in that belief system, then maladaptive behavior has to form, because if it doesn't, the only other option, which is extreme, is committing suicide. So maladaptive behavior is a form of not having to commit suicide, basically, okay? Another issue is basically you have to adjust the person's surroundings and environment. So obviously, as an extreme example, if a person finished like a drug rehab program and successfully, and they went back to the neighborhood with all their druggy friends and their drug dealer, and they had no job, et cetera, no support system, you don't have to be a PhD in psychology to know that that person is going to go back to using drugs. It's the same thing with surroundings. A lot of times if a person needs to go on an honest health journey, they might need to actually change their job, their career, or their field. They might need to change, their friends, including some family members as well. If they're in a very hardcore corporate environment, they might need to leave that environment, because a lot of times those environments aren't conducive to human health. They're very conditional, very stressful, very misaligned with how the human body and mind has evolved to function. So these are things that are difficult to do, but if a person wants a complete and honest resolution of their health issues, be it mental or physical, it is something that generally does need to be done to different degrees, depending on the person, and no absolutes. Everyone is different, and nature is a novelty generator. You have to remember there are no two grains of sand that are the same on the entire planet. So it's the same exact thing with people. So you have to ask, the next question, going a little bit deeper, you have to ask, why do people get into love-hate relationships? Why do people, develop these story gaps, get in the wrong careers, feel empty, get around the wrong people, et cetera, et cetera? And once again, this is a long conversation, but it's a misalignment in core values. So a core value, for example, in short, I like to work 2 days a week at home, remote, and spend a lot of time with my girlfriend. So if I was working 6 days a week in person, that's going to be a misalignment at the core values. And most people are misaligned in a myriad of different core values throughout their life. Most people don't even know their core values. I've coached many 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds that are extremely successful. And when I tell them, okay, let's build out your core values and be clear on that, a lot of them would go oh, I've never done this before, I've never thought about what I wanted to do or who I even am. And so that's important, because if you don't know and you're not crystal clear and honest about your core values, then obviously you don't have a blueprint for what you should and shouldn't be doing in the external world. So you will more than likely, of course, no absolutes, there's sometimes luck, get into the wrong relationships, get into the wrong careers, et cetera, and go up the ladder. Then you have to form maladaptive poor lifestyle and nutritional choices, gain weight, or you can put depression up there, or anxiety up there, sleepless nights, etc., psychologically induced chronic insomnia, all that stuff. Okay, so the next thing is going a little bit deeper, and this is more into Walensky's work, is then what leads people to do things they don't want to do, basically. What leads them to not be clear about their core values and then get into the wrong paths in life and then have to form all this maladaptive behavior that no amount of boot camps or nutrition gurus or stuff like that is going to solve at the end of the day if the problem isn't met, as Walensky would say, at the level of the problem. So if the level of the problem is a misalignment in core values or is an overexpression of the false self, et cetera, then it needs to be met there, to help the tree going up the ladder. It can't just be stopping at the top or stuff of that sort. So with Walensky's work, it's very interesting, and it has to go back to, we spoke about the central nervous system a little bit. And what is the purpose of the central nervous system? I mean, if you really dive down deep into it, the real only purpose is just to get you to survive better. So if you really meditate on it, you'll be able to trace pretty much everything you do to survival. Like, you need to go to college, you need to get a job, you need to work your way up this, and why? Oh, to survive better. You need to hang out with these people so you can be liked more. For what? So you can survive better. Even a lot of spirituality, for example, is I need to become more spiritual, I need to become more awakened, enlightened, etc., so I can understand the world better, so I can navigate better. Why? So I can survive better. So it always goes back to survival. Okay, and another way the central nervous system gets you to survive better is simply through creating a personality. And according to Walensky, this is done for you. And then you kind of think you are that personality your whole entire life. And it usually happens between the ages of 5 months and 12 months. And one of the ways it does this is it establishes what's referred to as a false core. So it's basically like your greatest fear, and there are generally 9 personality types. So one false core, for example, would be like, I am worthless. And that is that person's greatest fear. And whenever they get triggered, if they really meditate on it by asking, what's the worst of that? Or what's so bad about that? They will get back to, I feel worthless. I am worthless. So what do they do to overcome this their entire life? They spend their entire life proving that they're worthy to avoid their greatest fear of feeling worthless. And the problem with that is the idea or the false core of I am worthless is a false conclusion. So you can't come up with the right answer from a false conclusion. So what happens is the person's greatest fears in this situation, I am worthless. So I'm going to spend my entire life proving I am worthy, which is the false self, which leads them into the wrong core values, which then leads them into the wrong love-hate relationships, into the wrong careers, into the wrong surroundings, which then leads them and forces them to adopt maladaptive behaviors to deal with that, which leads them to poor lifestyle and nutritional choices, which in this situation leads them to excess weight gain. And that's the etiology tree I wanted to describe. I didn't describe it exactly how I wanted to describe it, because I obviously haven't been public speaking in forever, but that's the general idea. Does it work for everyone? It doesn't work for everyone. And there are no absolutes. Everyone's unique, but it's a great tool, and I feel a huge upgrade as compared to what's currently offered in healthcare. And that's symptom management for the most part. And I would urge also with this message is for a lot of healthcare providers, although it's difficult, to try to walk away from symptom management practices, especially from just giving people an endless list of medical drugs and not genuinely helping them understand how to be mentally and physically well. So that's it. That's my conversation today. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Can we find you? Like, where can we find this online?
Oh, I think you can scan this QR code, and you can email me, and I'll be happy to send it to you. No problem.
Okay,
I'll be happy to send you the extended version. This is kind of like a very summarized version here. So.
your email address you can share?
Oh yeah, sure. E and then TRUFKIN at Gmail.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you.